The storm outside had been raging for hours, but inside the dimly lit apartment, it was nothing compared to the one inside Rowan Hale's chest. He had spent the entire week juggling double shifts, unpaid bills, and a 7-year-old daughter who pretended she wasn't hungry so he could eat. He stood in the tiny kitchen, hands shaking from exhaustion, staring at his cracked phone screen. The message he had meant to send to his coworker, an inside joke, a playful line meant to ease the stress, had gone to the last person he would ever want to text, Astra Varon, the notoriously cold, impossibly intimidating CEO of Varon Tech, his new boss. And worse, it wasn't just any message. It was flirty. Ridiculously flirty. The kind of line that would get a man fired, laughed at, or sued. As soon as he hit send, his heart dropped like a stone. He felt heat rush into his face, panic clenching every muscle. The world stopped spinning for one long, dreadful second, and then came the sound that nearly stopped his heart altogether, a knock at his door. A firm, deliberate knock. She was here. Before the story continues, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner if you believe in second chances, kindness, and the magic of unexpected moments. Rowan stood frozen, unable to breathe, unable to think, unable to understand how a woman like Astra could cross the city in 5 minutes. He opened the door with trembling fingers, expecting anger, humiliation, or a termination notice. Instead, he saw Astra standing under the hallway light, her hair slightly damp from the rain, her expression unreadable, neither cold nor warm, simply searching. The sight of her in his doorway felt unreal, almost cinematic, and Rowan instinctively tried to hide the peeling paint of the walls behind him. He braced himself for the worst, but instead of speaking, Astra simply lifted a brow as if waiting for him to explain. That's when his daughter, Mara, peeked from behind him, her thin frame wrapped in a faded blanket. Astra's eyes dropped to the little girl's face, lingering there far longer than Rowan expected. Something subtle shifted in her expression, something he wasn't meant to see. Astra Varon wasn't the type of woman who visited employees' homes. Everyone in the city whispered about her frostiness, her arrogance, her walls built too high for anyone to climb. Yet, instead of leaving, she stepped inside quietly, as if pulled by something she didn't fully understand. The apartment was small, but warm in a way money couldn't buy. There were drawings on the fridge, tiny shoes by the door, and the faint smell of cinnamon from a homemade candle. Astra took it all in with a strange, aching pause. Rowan rushed to apologize, stumbling over words, trying to correct his mistake, trying to make her understand he wasn't flirting with her, he would never dare. But as he spoke, Astra's gaze softened, and something almost wounded flickered in her eyes, as if she wasn't used to being spoken to with sincerity instead of fear. She asked him why he was working double shifts, why he looked so exhausted, why a man who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders still tried to make others laugh through a wrong text. Rowan wanted to hide his struggles, but there was something disarming about Astra's presence, like she could see the truth whether he said it or not. Eventually, he told her everything, how Mara's mother had left 3 years earlier, how he was behind on rent, how he barely slept, how he took the job at Varon Tech because it was the only chance at a future he had left. Astra didn't interrupt. She simply listened, her sharp features softening bit by bit, as if every word Rowan spoke chipped away at a layer of ice around her heart. What Rowan didn't know was that Astra had grown up alone in a mansion full of noise but empty of warmth. She had learned early that affection was fleeting, trust was dangerous, and vulnerability was a weakness she could not afford. She had become unbreakable by necessity, not by choice. And in Rowan's small home, messy, noisy, alive, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, humanity. When Mara tugged on her hand to show her a drawing, Astra kneeled without hesitation, letting the child pull her into a world of crayons and innocence. It startled Rowan, because it was the first time he had ever seen the CEO smile. Not the practiced corporate smile she wore in boardrooms, but something real, bright, painfully genuine. As the minutes passed, Astra noticed the broken heater, the stack of unopened mail, the single chair missing a leg. She saw the way Rowan kept glancing at Mara, making sure she was warm, fed, safe, even if it meant he went without. She saw the kind of man he was, not the kind people wrote about in business magazines, but the kind her heart had forgotten how to believe in. And when Rowan apologized again for the text, face red, words tumbling, Astra surprised him by saying it wasn't the worst message she'd ever received. In fact, it was the first in years that had made her laugh. Not ridicule, not mockery, but a quiet, almost shy admission that she appreciated being seen as a woman, not a machine. For the first time in her life, Astra didn't feel like a CEO with a reputation to protect. She felt like a person in a small apartment that smelled like candles and hope. Rowan offered to walk her to her car, but she shook her head. Instead, she told him she came because she didn't want him to be afraid. Because no one had ever looked so terrified after sending a text, and no one had ever spoken to her the way he did, with honesty, vulnerability, and zero agenda. Later that night, after she left, Rowan sat on the couch in disbelief. Mara curled against his arm, whispering, "Daddy, she was nice." And for the first time in months, Rowan allowed himself to hope. Maybe life wasn't just hardship. Maybe kindness found its way back eventually, sometimes disguised as a cold CEO at your door in the middle of a storm. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps us spread more uplifting stories every day. Special request, before the video ends, comment below what your favorite moment in the story was. And with that thought, Rowan closed his eyes, letting the rain outside fade into the sweetest silence he had heard in years.